Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Outturn Preview, the November bumper issue. I have Outturn in my hand. I have special guests coming in, our very own Andrew Derbidge and Alex Moores. Welcome you both to the stream. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello, good to see you both.
Look at this. We're all here. And there's everyone tuning in. This is great. Good to see everyone tuning in. Thank you so much. We've just literally in the last 90 seconds had some very, very minor technical difficulties. So we're going to see how we roll with this tonight. But I appreciate your patience and appreciate you all coming in. And you know what? Worst comes to worst and everything falls apart. We can all just share a dram and forget about the presentation that is supposed to work. But you know what? We'll see how we go with that. I'm going to bring that up now and put that up on the other screen here. Just see if that works. If this breaks everything. Close enough. I'm just going to introduce everything about tonight. For those playing along at home, you should have your 7 dram packs already laid out in front of you. If you want to crack open 35.292 and let that open up in the glass so you don't have to rush to it in a moment. That's the Crackers and Breeze. We'll talk about a bit about all of that in just a second. This is the Outturn Preview. There's Outturn. I just showed it in my hand as well. The ultimate summer dramming guide, as we're calling it, and it's all online in a week from now, Friday, the 12th of November. It falls a little bit later. And this issue has a very special artwork commissioned especially for this Outturn by Jeremy Young down in Tasmania. He's an Australian artist. We wanted to sort of celebrate what it feels like to have a summer whiskey sort of season here. You can see some society bottles sitting in the grass, and of course, he also looked after the back cover, which is the aftermath of what Outturn looks like from the back cover end, which is the bin chicken and budgie smugglers left over after the party on the beach. You can check him out on Instagram. I do encourage you following him. He's a great visual artist, and we're really happy to have worked with him on this one. I'm actually giving away a pack tonight. I have this pack in my office here, the Cocoa Nut Magic is Strong and Day is Fading West Away. It's a 3 dram pack. We're giving these away to anyone who joins the society. But if you've got a cool photo of your setup of your Outturn Preview, maybe it's a photo of Outturn with the drams around it, or however you structure it, on this Friday night, then please post a photo, and I'm going to send this pack to the most imaginative photo that posted. You can either tag us on Instagram or put it up in our Facebook group. Where does that leave us? Let's start with 35.292 Crackers and Breeze. This is, of course, Malt of the Month. Shall we?
I reckon that is one of the cleverer names the panel's come up with in recent times. Yeah, the play on Crackers and Breeze, as in Breeze in cheese, and then Breeze as in the outdoor aroma you get that with the gentle breeze blowing. I reckon that's a great name. We're off to a good start here, lads.
It's a very summery whiskey, isn't it? Straight away on the nose. It's a very light and delicate, very apt flavor profile there.
I think you're right, Andrew. They've sort of nailed both the breeze concept and component of that sort of fresh grassiness, but also the cracker bit. You know, it's got some nice just baked grain elements to it.
Yeah.
Spot on naming.
And Dr. Akers says, vest greater than beanie. There you go.
Can't argue with that. But I can't take the vest, you know. AD's got the vest. I need my own thing.
Yeah, you can't take the vest.
5 minutes ago, I was wearing a T-shirt, and then I looked at the attendance list for tonight and saw Dr. Akers. I thought, frigate, I've got to put a bloody waistcoat on.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, Rob's winner dram pack setup, better include him with some sort of cravat in the photo.
Yeah, put a photo up, put them up on our socials. I'm giving away that 3 dram pack. Even if for a member who's wants to show them enjoying their drams tonight, take a photo, please.
Do you know what? Just looking at some specs there, and maybe getting a bit too nerdy too early on, but first of all, Bourbon Barrel, 59%. Only when was this distilled? 2013. So it's a 7-year-old. To only get 188 bottles out of the barrel there, that's a pretty mean cask.
Yeah, it's pretty stingy, isn't it? It's yeah. What does it say there? Yeah, 188 bottles from a barrel. So you'd expect that to sort of push closer to sort of what 220, 230. Hopefully.
At this age, absolutely, yeah. So yeah. I'd suggest this cask may have had a leak or two, or maybe it was so tasty the manager raided it in the warehouse a couple of times.
Very likely. Yeah, it could have leaked a bit, could have been raided a bit, you know, the usual.
That's funny. I remember when we did the Society Ultimate Whiskey tours to Scotland, and our group was going around some of the warehouses back in the early days. Certainly on the first tour in 2009, when managers were at that time were quite happy to just get stuck into some casks. You'd go through the warehouse, we'd pick one at random, and we'd take a sample of it quite liberally. And I remember thinking at the time, this is going to have if the society was to ever purchase this cask, the outturn would be pretty mean, just based on what we were experiencing in the warehouse that day.
Especially if a few groups have been through and tasted that cask. I did take a photo of myself with the Big G, who used to be the headmaster, the distillery manager, I should say, at the distillery. He's since moved on to Dingle. I owned that hoodie for about 24 hours, left it somewhere. They've got some of their casks. This is a distillery that traditionally you see a lot of ex-wine casks and a lot of sort of experimentation in different wood. There's the Big G sticking his nose in a barrel.
Hang on, stop there. The Big G is Graham Wright in Adelaide.
Oh, this is the Scottish Big G.
Come on.
Come on. Anyway,
he's Mr. Cool to you and I.
Mr. Cool. And a fun moment for me was when he opened the spirit safe and said, "Oh, do you want to try the new make?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to." And of course, the lock was just ornamental; it just flung open. And he said, "Well, go for it." I said, "I don't have a glass." And he said, "You don't need your glass; just cup your hands in there and grab some." So that was it's much more relaxed than some distillery tours. There's the newer side of the distillery, the Frilly stills sitting there. And I should make mention at this point that this is not the only 35 in Outturn this month. There's one of three. So there's 35.282, which is a bit of a sleeper, I reckon. We haven't really talked about that one much. A 12-year-old first fill. The 35.271 encased in leather, which was a partner bar exclusive and now available in Outturn. And of course, this one, the Crackers and Breeze.
It's interesting what you say, Matt, about, because they are very experimental, and they've sort of been playing around with lots of different types of wine and naming what the wine is. It's quite nice to actually go back to just a straight up bourbon cask with their spirit in it. I've almost forgotten what straight up bourbon cask 35 smells like.
It's interesting you say that, Morsey. I mean, we got to remember that tradition, if you like, of experimentation and wine casks was born out of the days when it was owned by Glenmorangie. And according to whiskey folklore, Dr. Bill Lumsden would use this distillery as his playground and his experiments. And if it worked at this distillery, he'd then apply it at Glenmorangie. Now, of course, this distillery was bought by the French company, and Glenmorangie sold it on in, I'm going to say 2008. I don't know if I might be wrong with that. It was a while ago. And with that, one assumes the tradition of playing around and experimenting. I don't know if it changed back then. So, are they now more up the straight and narrow? I mean, one thing this distillery has done since Glenmorangie got rid of it, they've started peated campaigns, and the peated whiskey I've had from this distillery has been spectacular. I really hope that the society can get a cask of that or two in the future.
Well, we did just have a peated 35. I think it was an ex-peated cask, though.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't peated spirit.
No, but still kind of cool to see. A port scratchings, it was called. There's actually a couple of bottles still available with that one.
I'm really enjoying this. That is just classic Speyside drinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very enjoyable. Absolutely.
I was actually expecting it to be a little bit more astringent too. I mean, it's below 60, but it's still got some youth on it. But no, it drinks amazingly vibrantly rather than hot.
And you'd have to say that as a first fill bourbon barrel, that's done its job, hasn't it? That's the reason why, even at only 7 years, it's actually quite well developed.
Definitely.
I think it's very apt in the light and delicate, though, if that makes sense. It's not too sort of oaky. It's not too sweet either. It's got a lovely savoury note to it. Yeah.
And dare I say, already appropriately placed as the first cab off the rank tonight.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that. And it's also, by the way, it's $135 in Outturn. That's got to be one of the best value society bottlings ever produced.
Ridiculously cheap. Good value, says the salesman.
Good value, excellent value, or ridiculously cheap. Take your pick. All right. Well, some great comments coming through. First fill 35s, absolutely. Watching on my phone, and at this size, AD looks very Patrick Stewart from this angle.
Oh, engage.
I take that as a compliment either way. Yes, this will be a great summer dram. Absolutely, this is an absolute like summer drinker. This one, and
I'm hoping that
235.7 was a stunning at the Whiskey Now preview, which was only just a couple of nights ago. Yeah,
I'm hoping that previous comment that there's been some crackers this year was a deliberate pun on the one we're having.
Yeah, let's hope so. There it is. Well, shall we press on? So, where are we up to?
G15.10, is that next cab off the rank?
That's the next cab off the rank indeed. So G15.10 is our next cab off the rank here. There it is. Okay. Now
I had to read this about 5 times before I knew which way around. Okay or okay. Too many drams.
It does sound like it should be okay. That rolls the tongue easier. So lucky we're putting this one fairly early on.
Indeed.
So we're moving to a grain whiskey. I know that all three of us have talked about this before. About grain is the underrated whiskey choice, if you like. It's often overlooked. And I think G15 is you overlook it at your own peril.
But I think I'm pleased to say, Matt, I think we're coming out of that era. I think that the problem with grain whiskies is the textbooks that were so seminal and were so influential, written in the 80s and 90s, poo-pooed it at the time because there was really only one grain whiskey commercially available, and it wasn't great and it was cheap. And there really wasn't access to quality grain casks. And it's kind of taken a generation and maybe 20 years or so, and perhaps the independent bottlers coming along and really lifting the veil on grain whiskies and putting some crackers out there. And it took the independents. And I'm going to blow our own trumpet here and say it was the society that really led the way in showcasing grains and showing how great they could be, because there just weren't other choices around. And I think with that now, we've educated and possibly destroyed some bad press that was probably inadvertently put out there 20, 30 years ago that spread the stereotype that people believe these days about grain whiskies.
Yeah.
I agree, Andrew. And it seems like even I was guilty of this early on. Even once the indies sort of picked it up, or maybe even the OBs, there was almost the age statement concept carried with grain a bit longer. And it was sort of like, grain can be good, but that one has to wait. So you can't have a good young grain. But then that's even now been usurped as a theory, because we're getting some amazing ones that are, 10 years old.
Well, I could excuse myself from camera and just pop next door and get a book for a moment, and I'll find the page that says that, grain whiskies need to be matured to 20, 30 years until they're any good. That was what Michael Jackson wrote back in 1988 or 89. And the legacy of that was very far reaching. And to be fair, look, I remember going to forgive me, I'm about to use some foul language. I remember going to a Johnny Walker Journey of Taste event back in 2002.
Wow.
Sorry, 2001. And at the time, it was a promotional tasting for Johnny Walker Black, and they led you through 4 single malts and a grain. And the grain came from the Cameron Bridge Distillery, and you both probably remember this, but they actually had an official bottling called Cameron Brig. They dropped the E for it. And sure enough, that was the first whiskey. It was like a Johnny Walker Black deconstruction tasting. And you started with the grain. And surprise, surprise, yeah, it was pretty ordinary stuff. And that was the only grain you could get back in 2002. And, everyone tasted that and thought, well, okay, that's what grain whiskey's like. No, thank you. North British put out a release a little later on, which was a bit more interesting because they were using corn rather than wheat. But yeah, as I say, 20, 30 years later, and thanks to the society putting out some stonkers like this, we're changing the landscape.
By the way, big welcome to Mark Wibbo. I hope I'm saying your surname correctly there. That's if this is your first society event, this is awesome. That's welcome. This is a good way to start. You get to sort of preview some of the outturn. And Paul saying here, agree with Andrew. After months of single malts, that cocoa nut blew me away. Yeah, I mean it can often it's almost like a nice palate reset sometimes. It's like if you don't have whiskey one night and you say, oh, I'm going to have an Armagnac instead, it's almost like a nice palate reset, and it sort of sparks what you like about some of those other spirits as well. Now,
and I think, again, sorry, I don't mean to harp on. Give me the signal, Matt, if I'm going on too much. But we talk about the small percentage of single malt that's destined to be bottled as a single malt and how much of it goes for the blends. When you look at grain whiskey, 99.99999% is off to the blenders. So they don't waste money putting them into good casks. And so when you go to the grain distilleries, they are filling into second fill, third fill, fourth fill casks because it's or more, yeah.
Or fifth, yeah.
Because it's to lay the foundation for blends. And so, you've got to go to an independent who's going to actually find something that might be from a first or second fill to really get the extraction and the oak development so that these things come to life younger in their lives.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is actually predominantly, this is a barley grain. This is a malted barley through a grain still. I'm pretty close. Am I close on that for G15?
Are we in that area of Scotland, like next to that very large body of water known as Loch Lomond?
Yes, yeah, with the rinky-dink supermarket and sandwich shop of Alexandria. Yes,
right.
I have to remember as the rookie on this, you can't. I forget you guys. You can't name them, can you? It's points off.
But points off. I mean, it's near a large.
I have to find clever ways to make the point now.
My son is just off camera with a little checkbook, and he's there ready to
deduct points.
Deduct points, yeah.
We all start at 100 and we all end at 0. It's fine. I think that's barley spirit, but through a grain still, so it's technically grain whiskey.
I think that stacks up on the palate too, just in terms of what I'd expect from. I'm a bit newer to the grains as a category and haven't tried as many as Scotch whiskies, but or single malts, I should say. But yeah, no, that's got a very that'd be your converter's grain, if I could put it that way, on the palate.
I'm okay with you being newer to the grain category, Alex. It's rum. I need to twist your arm a bit further on, as I understand that.
I'm still. Yeah, I've got no problem with grain. I have a bit of a problem with rum, so that's
right.
Yeah. Not that I dislike it. You've shown me some pretty good ones recently. Some of the last tastings with SMWS ones are starting to. Well, when you give me 25-year-old Corona or whatever the society bottle lasts, it's an easy convert at that point. But
never heard of it. I have heard of R13, but I've never heard of that other word you
said.
Start deducting.
Does it count if we're not drinking it tonight?
Ooh, I don't know.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. To be fair, so we will reinstate Alex's points there.
Is a penalty for naming the distillery the SMWS equivalent to a swear jar. Exactly. We'll call it a dram jar. And Rob, always in your corner, Alex. It's Morsey that has the problem, not the rum. Good.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the real, like probably 5 drams deep, the real muckraky will start. From makers, I reckon.
Deservedly so. I took a photo of the still from which this the spirit came off. It's probably the least sexy photo you can probably see of a distillery. Very industrial, very tall column. I couldn't actually see the bottom of it from where I was standing. Without sort of
as a structural engineer who designs steel structures, that's a pretty sexy photo, I can tell you.
Yeah. Wait, there's a structural engineers conference tonight? That's the audience. Okay, sorry. Right, here we go.
I was going to say, as a lawyer, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen, so I'm pretty happy with it as well. Depends how far you're leaning over, Matt.
Well, it's pretty far. I mean, but it's okay. I was running fluoro, so I wasn't going to die. It's fine. Yeah. Rightio. Well, I hope we're all enjoying that grain. We've started with a young, a light and delicate malt spirit just to sort of spark the palate. Dig straight into malt of the month. It's the malt of the month selection each month is something that Andrew picks out as something that is fun, affordable, shareable, and we have plenty to go around. That G15.10 I would call a little bit of an underdog, a little bit of a sleeper in Outturn, because there's some big sexy codes always and flavor profiles that people often focus on. But sometimes you go like, oh, that's actually really incredible whiskey, that G15. I really enjoy that. Actually, I would really like another dram of that. So that might be on my potentially on my shortlist for Outturn for myself. But yeah, I think we might dig into our next whiskey, which is 31.38 Slippers by the Fire. Now, the last time we had a 31, Andrew salivated, and it was, and very justly so, it was an incredible whiskey. So here we are, 31.38, Slippers by the Fire. It is a Volks Collection, 1988 distilled. Had an initial cask of ex-bourbon Hogshead, final cask of first fill ex-Sauternes Barrique, 43.5%, so just scraped in. And 32 years of age. We're putting this one fairly early on in the lineup. Whilst our palates are still fresh, it's fairly low proof. There might be a bit of this is my first time tasting this whiskey. This might be it might have a bit of mustiness, a bit of funkiness, almost a bit of peat going on here, but I don't think that will affect what we taste after this so much, given it's so low proof. And I always tend to put. How about you guys? Do you put sort of proof before peat or peat before proof in your lineups generally?
Ooh, that's a case by case basis, my friend.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with where it sits in the context of what else we're tasting tonight. I think it's in the right spot.
I also think probably, and we've got some seasoned drinkers watching, I'm sure, but for those who haven't done a tasting with 7 drams before, or have only really done them at venues that are kicking you out, I reckon this one could benefit from some time. So I'll probably be coming back to this.
Maybe leave this in the glass.
Yeah, good, great call, mate. That's very true.
Some of the region, some of the distillery here.
Do you know, it's funny. I went to Isla probably 8 or 9 times until I finally made the trek across that little bit of the water just to get to this place.
Something
nice.
Beautiful, isn't it? There's Graham Logan, the distillery manager. And there's some of their casks.
He took over just a couple of years ago, didn't he? Because it was Willie before that. Willie.
Yeah, 2018, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
For anyone going to Scotland, I did the same as you, AD, and went over to you've been to Isla before, and it's relatively easy to get around. And there's that little ferry that just drops you off. And I thought, this will be fine. I'll walk it. And had no idea, particularly the contours of how steep it is. And so I think that's probably one of the only times I've hitchched in my life.
That's a long hike, mate. That's wow.
Didn't do it in the end. Gave up.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's extraordinary about this island, and the island is called Jura, so I'm not breaking the rules by saying that, but there's that one road that basically just goes everywhere, and it's extraordinary along the way.
Great question from Mark here, asking a splash of water or leave it to sit for a bit.
Not at this age.
No, not at this age, and certainly not this proof. At 43.5%, it's already had a fair whack of angel share and loss of alcohol. So I would not add water to this. I'm not even going to test that, to be honest.
But to be fair, our gut reactions there are all 100% correct and follow the textbooks. But by the same token, I've not tasted it yet, and I think you've always got to taste until you really decide whether water's necessary or not. But on the balance of probability and according to the rules that someone wrote back in 1971, you would not think to add water to this.
Couldn't agree more. Mark, I always test it as well. So I will always, every whiskey I ever drink will have water in it at some point. But if I think, I agree 100% with what Andrew just said, so I'll wait till the end, can't take it back out, and I'll put a drop in knowing that it might possibly ruin it. And you have to be prepared to lose kind of what you've got left at that point. So I'll be drinking almost all of this before I tried it.
Hey guys, I've just had a taste, and first of all, don't add water. Secondly, there is the most extraordinary tropical fruit note to this.
Oh wow!
On the back palate and as it morphs into the finish, I'm getting a real peaches and pineapple and almost a kiwi fruit note. It's extraordinary.
Great
I'll go with kiwi actually.
I'm
amazed by the palate on that. It's so full of life and zing for a 43.5 as well. I was expecting that to almost be flat, but it's the opposite.
That was the strangest experience too, because as you were saying that, I was sort of approaching it to have the sip, and as it went in, I thought, no, this is sort of got that must. It's got the leathery, it's got the stale, but that was over in like a heartbeat, and then all was happening with the tropical fruits at the back and towards the back, but it's still got that slight sort of Hessian funk, but it's over so quickly on the palate. Hessian?
Hessian?
Yeah, Hessian?
Yeah.
I'd go with that.
Wow. That's a stunned silence of a dram, isn't it? I could nose that. I'm definitely going to leave at least half my dram aside for a little bit later on that one.
After the taste, the tropicals on the nose now as well. Just now you've got it all.
That you get it, yeah. I'm with you, Matt. In fact, I deliberately left a portion behind you. I'm going to revisit this probably tomorrow or over the weekend and revisit again.
Oh, you got some left in the sample bottle, have you?
Yeah.
Just, folks, you may have noticed, we should have mentioned this maybe a bit early on, these sample bottles are half size. So for those who have maybe not Mark Wibbo, who's just joining us for the first time, but other virtuals that we host at the Society, they're almost always 30 ml sample bottles, which is enough to share around or enough for 2 good pours for yourself. This is meant to be a preview. This is just meant to be a sort of a look at what's to come in Outturn next Friday. So all of these 7 whiskies are in our festive Outturn, which launches Friday, the 12th of November. That's
you get a bit lost in that.
Yeah, it's a stunned silence of a dram. There's a lot going on here.
It deserves the C word, folks. It's complex. It is complex. Wow. Do you know what's funny? Back in the old days of the local tasting panel, I can imagine we would have been sitting around with guys like Murray or Tony or Anthony participating in this, and I can just picture us that we would have been sitting there, that we would have come to this one, and there just would have been dead silence for 10, 15 minutes as we just wrote note after note after note as this just delivered, and then placing orders for it before we even confirmed our order.
Someone writes here, getting all those notes, but finding it a bit thin. That's me, though. Mouth texture is going to play a huge role, and often you're not going to find those sort of really thick sort of fusel oil style in older whiskies like this. They often become much more delicate. They do thin out a bit, and that thinness on the palate you'll find is often for me is a sort of a surefire sign of please don't add water. But it's your call.
I think it's also just a response to it only being at the lower end of the ABV scale too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Matt, this is probably one to pause on.
Not a Doug Paul. Sorry.
No, sorry, not Doug. Yeah, no. Just on that comment, particular flavour that sometimes comes through in the sort of mustier, possibly like dunnage stored casks, or it's just that sort of older, musty note that I attribute to that word anyway.
It's funny that you just brought up the comment there, Matt. Hessian sounds like a dud cork. Hessian is a descriptor that is sometimes associated with cork taint, but I would be very quick to point out that that's not the Hessian we're getting here. And I'm certainly not getting cork taint or TCA or anything like that on this. This is, no, not at all. And when we use word, Morsey, you've used the word musty tonight. I think I heard the word funk come out already as well. Let's be clear, those are terms that are quite often assigned to this distillery. It's part of their profile. Nothing to do with TCA or bad casks or bung corks. That's just what that's the profile that this distillery can produce just in its raw spirit.
It even says in Outturn that there's in the preamble for this release, it does say that there's the younger expressions from this distillery often come across as like quite cheesy or lactic and sometimes metallic, and that's I think if you can get that's I think at a younger age perhaps not a very desirable characteristic, but at an older age it holds up really well. It's like a well-aged cheese instead of getting that sort of lactic funk on a younger version or something that's a bit more sort of toned itself out a bit older. Yeah,
well, we've got to remember this distillery is owned by the same company that produces White and Mackay, and a good chunk of this goes to the White and Mackay blends. Yep. And they're producing the flavor profile that they want to go into those blends.
Yep. This is a cool spot to maybe pause, Matt, and talk about, because I just find this amazing, but it's such a good thing the society does that I love. You know, this is a 32-year-old whiskey, but this was a seriously old whiskey when the spirits team made the decision to recask it. And I think it's just one of those fun things where, you know, especially with the lesser known distilleries or if something's already got age on it, no one, like, people who get cask usually don't want to play with it. But the fact that the society would take this and go into something quite extreme like a Sauternes Brick, see what would happen. And I reckon I'm getting a lot of that real sweet note now as it opens up. The ones that Andrew was talking about earlier, probably a lot of the really honey sweet is a Sauternes component.
That first fill Sauternes has had an extra maturation of 5 years actually, so 27 years in ex bourbon, and then 5 years in first fill Sauternes. It's quite a long time.
Great comment there, Rob. I've actually been at
I've thrown it up on screen. There it is. Yes.
I've been in the room. I've done 2 live tastings with actually, as I say, in the room with Mr. Patterson, and it's quite the show. What you don't appreciate when you do a real tasting with him is the man's knowledge for Scottish history is extraordinary. You actually get quite an insight and a history lesson as he goes through these tastings. They're fantastic.
Mm.
Tricky Dicky, as some people refer to him.
Nose not boost. There you go. That is very nice. So the Volks Collection releases are they represent sort of our oldest and rarest offering. As for those who are newer members, may not have seen too many of these before, there's 2 Volks Collections in this very edition of Outturn. There's the 31.38, which we're just tasting now, and the 24.143, the 30-year-old from Distillery 24, which is rather special indeed. But I'll come back to that 24 as it's a bit on that a little bit later on tonight's tasting. So keep the comments coming through. Keep the chat coming through. Love to hear what you think of these whiskies as we go along. Taking questions, throwing them up on screen, and please take a photo of your setup, and I'll send the winner of the most interesting looking setup, that 3-dram pack. Comments coming through such as old mature whiskey, but not lost its fun factor. That's a really good point. It's still a fun whiskey. That's right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is true though, is that there's that misconception that older must equal better, and that's fading away, I think, as we learn more about whiskey. But a whiskey can be under matured and it can be over matured, so it's extremely uncommon for a whiskey to even make it to this age to begin with. But it's still got a lot of fun, a lot of going on in that glass. And I'm going to put a cap on that and come back to it because I poured the whole sample in. These are 15 ml samples, and we can come back around to that one after a bit of time. Yeah, thank you. Haven't seen a non-Volts 31 in a while. Yeah. Maybe in time, we'll see. Shall we press on? Are we all good to go?
Indeed.
Again, I couldn't tell you the name of that distillery of 31, but there's a photo. Shall we move on to 108.34, a dreamy nighttime drink?
John Jarvis, you're stirring there, mate.
John Jarvis could make a career out of stirring. I haven't seen his comment yet, but I will.
It's there on the side. Yeah. Cleverly disguised as Facebook user.
He would disguise as Facebook user, wouldn't he? This is 108.34, a spicy and sweet Distillery 108, and only the 34th cask we've ever seen from this distillery. 14 years, unpeated, first fill ex-bourbon barrel at 64.4%. I was really excited to put this one in the lineup. First of all, I couldn't tell you the name of this distillery. The big sign at the front wouldn't be able to tell you the name of it.
No, you can tell us the name. You just don't know how to friggin' pronounce it.
This is, by all standards, quite a young distillery, 1975. It even looks like it was built in 1975. It's a very strange-looking building, in my opinion, and it looks like a distillery that they thought would look really modern back in the 70s, and now it looks really 1970s.
Yeah,
with the wood paneling and whatnot. It's quite beautiful inside. It's very much a workhorse distillery. There's no visitors' rooms. There's no gift shop. There's no tours, and it's a big workhorse distillery that puts out about 4 million liters a year for Shivers Group for predominantly for blending. And when I say predominantly, I mean overwhelmingly 99% plus would go into blending. Even this modern photo of this gentleman operating the spirit safe looks like he's also from the 1970s, in my opinion. And you can see the wooden cladding beneath this, beneath it here, which would have looked rather modern compared to other spirit safes at the time. Looks like I think I've even made a comment here where it says that it wouldn't look out of place next to the floral couch and the distillery computer.
I think the building was based on that shape, mate.
And we have seen in the past very fleetingly core range peated examples, no age statement, 40% examples of them all, but not much elsewhere, not much otherwise. And I think it's one of those examples of where it's an old school sort of setup, and I think it works for them. And I think it's really cool for us to taste a youngish distillery, but also a distillery that does not have a core range per se, not really, and an unpeated example. Which is uncommon, which is rather cool. And it's also the fact that it's held at 64.4% after 14 years is also quite astronomical. So
just back up there, Matt. This distillery does a peated campaign for only 4 weeks of the year. It is unpeated for the remainder of the year. So unpeated is in fact the norm. And
I got the round the wrong way. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. No, they do a very small campaign, and that only started, if I recall, 15, 16 years ago. In response to at the time the category was growing.
15, 16 years ago, they were closed.
Sorry?
They were closed 15, 16 years ago.
Sorry, quite right.
Mothballed even. That's compared to where we've just been with 43% something. We've jumped back up to 64. And I'm so intrigued by this.
Usually I get more sort of nose warming, nose prickle off just the aromas of anything over sort of 63, but it's actually opening up quite nicely.
The building shape is very reminiscent of Darth Vader's helmet. I like that comment. That's true. Dark helmet, Spaceballs. Yes, I was hoping for a Spaceballs reference after that. Yes. And looks more like a chalet from a Roger Moore Bond film. Yes.
I see your Schwartz is as big as mine.
And someone, is this John Jarvis's comment? Is that Jarvis again?
That was, yes.
Hey,
yes.
good. Okay, just
mate, I am head to toe in merch. I would have thought of all people here, you would understand that is a valuable asset.
Oh dear, lovely long finish on this one. I haven't had a taste yet. I'm looking forward to that.
Whoever said that, that's a good call. It's an extraordinarily long finish. Wow.
Oh. Wow. What's that? It's like fresh banana cake on the finish as well.
Yeah.
It's that strange sort of poppy seeds as well.
You know, it's funny. I've got about 200 photos of this distillery. When you climb, mental blank. What's the mountain right next to this? I'm having an embarrassing moment on television when you forget the name.
Shall we call it Benaban?
Anyway, you climb the main mountain right next to this distillery, and every sort of 50 steps, you look back and you look directly down on this distillery, and the view looks fantastic. So you take a photo of it, then you walk another 20 steps and you look down, and the photo looks even better. So you take another one, and as you climb your way to the top, you found you've just taken photos all the way, and eventually you get home, download all your photos, and realize you've taken a really stupid number of photos of the same distillery. Oh, that's bugging. I can't believe I can't think of the name of that now.
No, those photos of that distillery were taken by Richard Goslin on our team for Unfiltered magazine, which was great. I've added a few drops of water to that, and it's opened it up wonderfully. I'm
certainly liking it more after a bit of time. I think it's having probably a similar effect, just that letting it breathe off.
Ben Rennis, thank you, Ever. Yes, Rennis.
Great comment from Lachlan here, but damn, this really fits the flavor profile. Yeah, spicy and sweet, and I really was really excited to have this one in the lineup, given it's so unusual. It's 14 years in such high proof, and so much going on in it.
Anyone getting an amazing burst of citrus on the mid palate?
With or without water? I've added water, so.
I haven't added water.
No, I'm lost in the custard, and I think I'm just it's the veil of all that bakery goods. I'm getting what you were talking about, Matt, the sort of walnut loaf or
poppy seed loaf or something for me.
Yeah,
I like it.
Does anyone remember Tang, the orange powder drink?
Yeah.
That's the citrus I'm referring to. It's Tang powder. You know, when you were little and you used to get in trouble for raiding the Milo jar, and like my brother and I we drank very little Milo, but by God, we ate a lot of it. We would just teaspoon ourselves, and then when Mum started coming home with Tang because it was supposedly healthier, we just started teaspooning ourselves Tang. Okay, so I was getting Andrew. I was getting an orange citrus, and Rob there's chimed in with grapefruit.
I'm getting a little more like key lime pie or something, a little bit zesty, but I get the lime. It's fun because I don't have much to compare this to either. I see them when you drink, you go, does this dram taste like this other SWS number of the previous cask or whatnot, or does it taste like the OB? I don't really have much of a reference point for this, so you can just sort of sit back and go, that's just, I'll enjoy it on its merits. That's quite enjoyable.
There's quite a few comments coming in there about this improving with water, so that seems to be the general consensus.
A few drops is going to open that one right up, I think. I mean, at 64.4 is pretty brutish. It's definitely a slap in the face, especially coming off 43.5.
Yeah, Matt, I know you hate this because I've got the dropper, and I know you're a fan of the jug. But I thought never more an appropriate moment than when that photo is up on the stream to nerd out about the science of everything.
Yeah, no, I I'm not a fan of the droppers, but that's okay. They work. Nothing wrong with them.
Let the record show I resisted the urge to make a joke about jugs.
What was it last time? There was one last time, which was right up there. Maybe blood orange, bakery delight with water, and we like all the jugs, says Robert Akers. Good.
But on a serious note, does this not just scream what the society is all about? Here's the distillery that most people can't pronounce, have never heard of, don't know the name. It doesn't have a core range presence, certainly not in this country anyway. And we're being treated to a cask that is just absolutely delightful. Is that not what the society exists for?
Yeah, absolutely. That you otherwise would not get any opportunity to taste.
Yeah.
AD said complex earlier. This one has pastry, flowers, citrus, white pepper, custard, etc. You would imagine these are all mutually exclusive flavors. Yeah, that's something, isn't it? That's a really good comment.
That's a really good comment, Lachlan, because I reckon sometimes you find that and you think if you equate it to food, you sort of think, well, these flavors would never go in a dish. You wouldn't design a recipe around having X, Y, Z. But then somehow, I mean, sometimes it might not work, but often in a whiskey, you get these incongruous flavor groups and they just do work because, the integration of maybe cask and spirit is enough to carry them through in different waves. And so I know what you mean, but I get those different components, different parts of the palate at different times of the drinking experience. So it's sort of, it does gel together. But yeah, you're right. It feels like it shouldn't.
I've just gone back to nose what's left in my glass of the 31.38, and it's changed so much already in that I'm getting like cigar ash suddenly on it.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Like just the ashy end of a cigar.
Yeah.
there's actually something's come out, something's jumped out of the glass on that one now.
Wow.
Mine's gone a lot more savoury on the nose than it was. I was getting all that tropical that Andrew first identified, and now it's gone to that ashy and much more savoury note on that 31. Cool.
Okay.
2 drinks for the price of 1 is all that is.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. It is 2 for the 1, isn't it? That's a yeah. Wow. Yeah, the 108 is exciting for me because that's like I think it's as Andrew articulated, it's a window into something we wouldn't otherwise experience.
You know what? I know we've got more to come, but for me, that's Dram of the Night so far.
Nice. Yeah.
I would like to think. I hope I'm not projecting here, but I'd love to think there'd be so many members who would get their outturn, open it up, and see 108 and just gloss past it and go, "Oh, 108, I've never heard of that number. What the hell's that?"
Yeah.
And you'd be missing out on something. And this is just Matt, you refer to them as sleepers or whatever. You know, it's just a great example of why you should never, ever make your choices just based on the fame of the distillery.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, no, don't be a code hunter, as we also say. It's which actually leads really well into what I've got up at the moment on the screen, is that we've taken the society takes the I guess the guesswork out for you in many ways here, because this is just some photos I've assembled from some of the study and research that goes on with the expert tasting panel and the Scotch Whisky Research Institute. In fact, on the left there is Richard Goslin from Unfiltered, but on the far right is Dr. Andy Forrester, who was one of the lead scientists at the Scotch Whisky Research Institute. I'm going to say Sweary from now on, who we liked so much, work he was doing, that we hired him, and he now works at the Society and has done for the last couple of years. There's all sorts of work that goes on between the Society and the SWRI on spirit analysis, on testing, on palate improvement, on palate training, which we're really happy to do, because it means that when you open an outturn, you don't have to go, oh, which ones are the good ones? We've already done that work. They've already been filtered out. They've already been passed or failed from the tasting panel. And that's why when they end up coming out of the casks that you can see here are some Society casks. And I liked these photos in particular of our some new racks coming in over at our Glasgow warehouse. That one has a 1996 on the barrel head. Barrel heads aren't always the truth. It's more about the barcode on them. But that cask on the right looked particularly appetizing, the 1993 with a Kalila written on the end of it there.
All I saw, mate, was 4 sherry butts, and I started salivating.
Yes, very sexy sherry butts right there. So it's always good to see that coming along. And I thought we might pour the next dram. Everyone can go at their own pace, of course. We are just going to pour the next one and see where we end up here. And the next one on our lineup tonight is 30.113 Dragon's Blood Fragrance Oil. One of 595, speaking of sherry butts. Here you go. Initial cask X Oloroso butt. Second fill XPX butt. And we had Andrew and I actually tasted we tasted a recent 30 that we in a tasting, which was the other. It was also a 7-year-old in the deep rich and dried fruits. The name escapes me at this moment, but
isn't that's there can't be too many bottlers that would take something out of an Oloroso butt and transfer it to a PX butt.
No, there wouldn't be too many. It's exciting to see that, though. It's gone from sherry to sherry.
Yeah.
But 7 years in a sherry butt is a short amount of time. So it's interesting to see how that's held up.
So certainly when you consider it was a refill.
Yes.
Yeah, in a first fill, that would probably be quite a long full maturation, but absolutely second fill would.
Head in the clouds. Thank you, Mark. Mark Teague, always coming through with the names. Yes, that was the one that we had on pairing. I think it was a mid-month offer, or was that a yeah, it's going to still escape me where we tasted it.
I can't remember, sorry, Matt. But,
it was only just recently, like 2 weeks ago or something.
I think it was chocolates, wasn't it, mate? Wasn't it paired with one of the chocolates in Krishna's?
No. That we used the 148.1 for the deep rich and dried fruits on that one. Anyway, look, that's okay.
Hey, there's a comment from Lachlan there in the comments. Still hanging out for Society Sherry Night. It's been done. We had a big one in Sydney. I Okay, to be honest, it was a few years ago now. We'll do it again. But that was a fantastic. That might have been before your time, Matt. It was an amazing night.
That'd be a lovely full circle, because for those who know a bit of the society's history, that's sort of one of Pip Hill's stories, was when he used to be the glass boy for, I forget the lady's name, but that sort of socialite lady in Edinburgh, and run the clean glassware service for her sherry parties. She used to host sherry parties. So that'd be very full circle. I'd like that.
There was one time, which was Andrew hosted one. You hosted one. It was like 2014 or something, Andrew. And then we hosted a big one in 2018 as well, which was a sherry whiskey night. But we'll do another one. It's been 3 years since our last big one. So yeah.
Sorry, 2014, was that when we had the last Sydney one?
2018.
Right. I was going to say, thank God. Time flies.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Darren. You're right. It wasn't the chocolate. It was the cheese. Yeah.
It was the cheese. Sorry, it was the cheese tasting. Yes, it was. That's where we had the head in the clouds. Yes, thank you. Another lady. Yes, actually, Cal, that's coming. That's coming. Yes, we know. Yes, that's actually in works at the moment. So that keep our eye out for February on that one.
We've got to have one before we can have another one, mate.
Yeah. And hashtag team refill. Yes, indeed. Cheese. Yeah, cheese tasting. Yes, everyone's saying cheese. Yes, good. Cheese.
That's a pretty awesome comment by Lachlan on the side there. I'm glad the events I missed out on were amazing.
Yeah. There we go. This is extraordinary. I've not tasted it yet, but it's so clean on the nose. Like it's so clean. Like
it is, isn't it? And actually, Matt, I remember when we had it with the cheese tasting, there was a bit of commentary at the time, and maybe I was being a bit cheeky on the night, but I've not had a great run of success with this distillery, and we invested a few minutes discussing that, and this is another one that restores the faith a little bit.
Does a bit. It's again brutish though. I mean, 67.8% is definitely up there in proof.
But it's not. I haven't tasted it yet, but it's not nosing. I'm not getting nose prickle. It's not stinging my nostrils as I sniff.
No, absolutely.
Andy, I think you're also getting your years mixed up as well, Andy Davis. 2018, the 132 lives long in my memory. 132 was 2015.
Yeah.
So that's also going back a bit. Yeah, Rob's echoing your comment here, Andrew. I would not call that at almost 68%. No way.
I think I often find that is more common where there might have been a cask decant swap over, bit of agitation or something. It's sort of the integration of the first cask into the second cask makes it have less of an impact on your nose, even if it's got high ABV.
Yeah, good call. Good call.
But I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, with you and Rob, I wouldn't have called that as 68, 67.8 on the nose.
It's not 67 on the palate either.
No.
Yeah, wow. Not at all.
That's a bit of a Christmas frame, isn't
it? To be fair, like you're north of 59.60, but it's not a scorcher.
No.
Wow. Gee, that is that is good.
That is good. That is surprisingly gentle for all the same reasons we've been talking about. It sort of has this lovely palate coating effect. Finish is nice, warming, but it doesn't have any of that real heat. But I was almost bracing for that to happen, and it never came.
For Andrew to call this good and wow for a 30 is high praise indeed.
I'm going to go one further, mate. I might be putting an order in for this.
Oh.
Wow.
That's excellent.
That's a stonker of a sherried whiskey, isn't it?
Do you know what? I'm now kicking myself. I didn't order more cases of this when I had the opportunity a few months back.
There's a great question here, from Whiskey's My Jam. What ABV is Distillery 30 filling casks at then these days? Well over 70? I'd say pretty much on 70. You'll see a lot of it coming in at 70 mark. They are, in fact, the distilleries within that group of distilleries all pretty much feel pretty high these days because it's there's not much economy in maturing water, as they say.
Bearing in mind that company also is very heavily invested in the more expensive variety of casks, and so they can't get the quantity that they would like to, or that their accountants would like to get their hands on. So yeah, absolutely, they're filling it at much higher strengths.
Wow, you know that like a brown sugar meringue on the palate.
Oh, brown sugar, good call.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to sing that anymore, are we? That's been banned.
No, that's not banned. Sorry. Yep. Along with that, what was that Christmas song that was banned? Because that's Christmas is coming, so that one is definitely a Christmas song in there somewhere that got banned.
I'm pretty sure we banned Mariah Carey in most circles, but
Michael Bublé is next. Then come on, he has to be.
No, don't touch the
please.
No.
So they say that time of year where they roll Michael Bublé out of a cave and it's Christmas time again. Here we go. Come on.
Mate, he does a new album every year and he works hard, all right? Leave him alone.
Sure. Wow.
Geez, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe it's cold outside. Yes, sorry, there you go. Yes, someone spotted it. Yes, that was the one I was talking about. That's an also banned song. And Mariah Carey was banned. Good. Okay, good to hear. And yes, Sunil says the excitement is justified. Absolutely agree. It's an exciting whiskey and an exciting outturn.
It's got a beautiful balance, this one of, sorry, Matt, just because the sherry, especially sherry into sherry, it can often be overdone. I mean, sherry as a general rule can often be overdone if it's not well managed. It's easy to let it go. And maybe the relative youth on this one, it's just, there's so much vibrancy of like the fresh fruit in the spirit still in there. So you're almost getting like, it's unmistakably sherry. No one will get that wrong, but it's got enough of that underlying sort of the freshness that you might get from a bourbon cask into a sherry cask if you wanted to achieve it another way. And it's just brilliant.
100%. But I think we're missing the more exciting element here. It's only 7 years old.
Mm.
My goodness. Like, wow.
Yeah.
That's the kind of whiskey for me where you'd pour one decent sized dram of it and you'd be set for the night.
Honestly, I'd fill my glass up to here and settle down in front of the test match or the footy for the afternoon, and I'd be a very happy man.
I think you'd be a very asleep man if you're filling your length into the top at 70%.
No, happy, jolly, tired. Yeah.
guys, practice.
And the society promotes responsible drinking. Ladies and gentlemen, just out of the top of that in there, of course, Calte asks, ADL Matt, as this dram/cask is from 2013, would you say this is a proper sherry butt instead of a seasoned sherry cask?
So clearly I'll take this one then.
The maturation process and casking wood policy for this distillery and this group is one of some magnitude. It would be impossible for us to identify that either way. I'd say it's very likely a seasoned cask, but I don't think that should play any sort of any bearing on whether you enjoy it or not. That's all that matters. If you enjoy it, if it's in your glass and you enjoy the spirit, which is what we're all doing at the moment. I don't think it's. I'm not saying the answer should not exist. I'm saying do you enjoy it? That's all that matters. And if it's seasoned or real, in fact, there was a really good case to be made, which was an article written a couple of years ago now about in defense, in very worthy defense of seasoning of casks, saying that it's actually controllable. And so it's actually sort of you have full control over the start to end finish of the creation of those casks, rather than relying on what you could perhaps use from a bodega that might not be very good. So it was sort of it works both ways. There's pros and cons to both sides, I guess. But I think if you enjoy it.
I'm going to do something I swore I'd never do, but I'm going to give a very self-indulgent self-plug here. But if you go to whiskeyandwisdom.com, there is an article there I wrote and published a couple of months ago now, and it's the Whiskey Lover's Guide to Sherry. And if you want to get an insight into sherry, and in particular how the sherry industry impacts or how the Scotch whiskey industry uses sherry casks, you'll find a lot of helpful information there. So have a read of that, folks.
Absolutely.
Yep. The other
would
thing
you
on
fill
the
a
good
blender's glass to the brim, though? We already know someone who does that, so no, we'll leave it to them.
Shout out to
just on Cal's point around the proper sherry comment, I think as well, it's a lot of provenance is always stated about a cask that someone bought because it was, it's some vintage amazing cask from a well-known bodega or a winery if it's a red wine cask or something. And obviously, if you paid a lot more because of that provenance, you're going to want to sing it from the rooftops. But sometimes a good product coming out of the cask initially doesn't make for a good maturation program with the whiskey that comes out of it. Just sometimes it doesn't work. And I've had some pretty bad, or I wouldn't say bad, but they were just pretty boring, mediocre whiskies that were in Chateau de Chem, like vintage, seriously good wine casks, and the prestige of that would have been enough to sell it. But at the end of the day, if you were blind tasting it, you wouldn't have probably put it up there. So
well, how old was the wine cask though?
Exactly. What was the maturation like? What vintage was the wine from? Because the 74 is, rubbish or whatever. But it's not necessarily true that the good cask and good product will make for a good spirit if you don't monitor your maturation program properly anyway, Cal. So
there's a question that's popped up on the side feed here. Why the need to recast this one after only 5 years? Who said there was a need? One of the great things about our colleagues in Scotland at the moment, and Ewan Campbell, who's driving a lot of this, we like to have fun because we can. Who said we had to? I can imagine Ewan walking through the warehouse, tasting this, taking it to panel. Hey, what guys? We've got this this spare PX cask over here. Why don't we just tip it in and see what happens? That's the joy of experimentation, and that's the joy and the privilege that we as the society have right now, courtesy of our cask program, our inventory, and what we have, and what we can play around with to do it. Was there a need? Maybe, maybe not, but we could, so we did. And I'm going to say thank you. I'm glad we did. This is a treat.
Yeah. Great comment here. Love a bold tannic wine, but only as a wine. Yeah. And 76 year Ken was stunning. Sure.
Preferred the 77 myself, but anyway.
And you're tuned to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Who would have thought?
77 Yellowtail every day for me. Out of this import. River Eater all the time.
77 Yellowtail. Oh, yeah. We'll call that the plastic cap era, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Find me on Twitter. Comment. Yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I'm also going to park a bit of that 30. I want to see how that develops. I'm going to let it sit in the glass for a bit longer.
Me too.
I'm going to park a large amount of that underneath the Christmas tree for myself later on.
There we go. Awesome.
Susie, if you're watching this, and I know you do, either live or the next day, can you put aside a bottle for me? That'd be great.
That'd be great. Before we, I just want to talk a bit about tasting notes, actually, because we sort of touched on this before. We're going to move on to the next whiskey in a bit. 93.160. If you want to pre-pour it now, you're welcome to. There was an external combustion engine comment, and it reminded me of the Stirling engine as an idea, as a sort of smell and as a taste. And it also made me re-explore the tasting notes that we had listed for this whiskey. And I've often had that comment, especially from newer members coming along saying, oh, maybe I don't get it. Like, I don't actually get all these tasting notes. I don't actually taste all of these. So am I missing out on something? And my answer is always the same. No, you're not. I don't taste all of this either. No one does. This is the joint tasting notes of the entire expert tasting panel, where they've picked out and combined their tasting notes into a cohesive sort of paragraph. And so you might read through that and say mint tainted petrol and coconut oil provided high octane fuel before being joined by vanilla, etc. And I've never drunk mint tainted petrol. I don't encourage anyone to do so either. But it's a certain smell and aroma, and almost, and some of these tasting notes you'll see in Outturn are a time and place tasting note. They're sort of like, we're off the coast of Amalfi drinking wine or something. They're very much a time and place tasting note rather than a direct one. So you can take these, and some of them are a bit sort of fluffy, and some of them are much more direct. But something like this one where it says nutmeg, eucalyptus, and camphor. I absolutely agree with the camphor note and the nutmeg note, especially in this next whiskey. And I've tasted this one a couple of times already. And
so this is my first time, and I agree with that 100%, and agree that this is an amazing nose on this.
And it's just easy to get wrapped up in sort of tasting notes, and especially newer members read them and think they might be missing out on some of the tasting notes. And I've had that comment a few times over the last few weeks as we've had new members joining in and discovering what we're all about. And this is a bit of Distillery 93. Again, I'll keep the name under wraps as long as possible. We'll call it external combustion engine for now. Oh, I couldn't tell you what distillery it is. There you go. And I think this is an underrated gem of a distillery. I think people often think of Campbelltown, think of it's the sexy brother up the road of Distillery 27 and miss out on some of what's happening over at Distillery 93.
This amazes me because I agree, and I just can't. I mean, I love Distillery 93. I think anyone who I've talked to at events and online and whatever and met, absolute fanatic for Distillery 93. We're done by the society. And you still have people refer to it as like the other Campbelltown distillery, as if there's like the anointed number one, which is a no-brainer and everyone has to accept it. And then, that's the other one. So, no, like this, I agree. I could not agree more with the comment about underrated, understated, lesser known,
But
there's Ian McAllister, by the way, like lovely chap. And that's just some of the photos we got at the distillery. And I think it's,
To be fair, Morsey, but if you're not a member of the society and you're not experiencing Society 93s,
that is a very good point.
How else are you going to form another opinion?
Spot on, and that's probably just the luxury of my main experience of this having been 93 rather than the OB.
Look, I've tried plenty of the OBs, and they're nice whiskies, but they don't blow you away. Whereas the society casks that we've bottled over the years. And I see Andy Davis is watching tonight. Andy Davis and we've had some amazing 93s that we've enjoyed over the years, and they're just extraordinary. And I have to say that they've blown the occasional 27 out of the water at times.
Oh, that's good.
This is actually really different from the first time I tasted this. It's maybe it was because of what I tasted just before it or something last time, but this is much
I've had a wonderful cocktail that smelled like this. It has that kind of. It was like I think it was just a white chocolate eucalypt coconut kind of cocktail somewhere once. And I'm loving that sort of menthol note coming off this for me. It's got the vanilla and the sweet as well, which is why I'm conflating those two drinks. But I love that slight menthol note.
That's a great call. Actually, the manager of this distillery drowned himself in Campbelltown Loch at the height of the downfall of Campbelltown as a region. Very, very sad story. And his ghost is said to haunt the distillery.
Scares off of the angels. More for us. Come on. Distillery 93 is the last 18 months have left a huge impression that 93 is anything but the other distillery. Yeah, really good call there, Darren.
Absolutely, Darren.
And Andrew and I have spoken about this before live as well in the past, where the sort of like 8, 9, 10-year-old expressions that we've seen through the society of this distillery are radically different whiskies from like the 15, 16-year-old expressions that we've seen as well. And even earlier this year, we had a 28-year-old expression that was wildly different. Again, it's probably one of the most diverse outputs in age and also in profile across those age statements. And I still have an unopened bottle of Drammeltown Loch, 93.99. I remember that bottle well.
That was good, wasn't it?
Bloody good whiskey. Often referred to it as the diesel whiskey. Yes.
It's funny you say that, Lachlan, just on that comment on diesel, because I often, you hear that around this particular distillery. People often comment on that sort of engine oil note. And I definitely get it, but sometimes it's just that I have a bit of a problem with that as a personal preference. Sometimes it's too much, but just when it's that sort of that slightly almost sweeter version of the sewing machine motor oil rather than a real diesel engine, I think it's just absolutely spot on. But I had one of these called a Classic Rally, which some people I've shared my bottle with, and that was just like boat oil. leaking out the back of a boat, and that was just a little too much for my palate. But other people loved it.
I love it.
The one for me, Morsey, I've had a few from this distillery and all society expressions, and you both will appreciate this. You will know the smell of standing outside on the Calmac ferry from the mainland across to Isla. There's that smell of the Calmac ferry, and it's the fumes, it's the salt air, it's the brine, it's the diesel engine, and there are some casks from this distillery that just take you right back to sitting on the sitting out on the deck on the ferry, and that's the engine oil and the boat engine smell that I associate with this distillery.
Absolutely agree. I'm waiting for the named bottle. The Kenner Craig petrol station will come up at some point as a name.
Question here from newish member Mark. So generally, how indicative are the SMWS casks to the general output of each distillery the selected casks come from? Derbs, do you want to take that one?
Well, a very simple answer is very, very different. And that's the reason why we have distillery codes. I mean, the whole reason why go back to 1983 when the society started, the reason we came up with codes was we had a gentleman's agreement that we would not put the name of the distillery on our casks because what we were releasing was tasting very, very different to the commercially available expressions. If you got your commercial expression of Glen, I'll use it, Glen Bagpipe. Your typical Glen Bagpipe down your local bottle shop would have been a mix of bourbon casks or sherry casks or whatever put together. So when the society put out a cask that was just purely a bourbon cask or purely a sherry cask, it tasted so different to the commercial expression that we were obliged to that was one of the reasons we were encouraged, and the setup of the codes was there at the time. So always very different. And I think the three of us would certainly agree. It's very rare to have a society bottling and go, wow, that's exactly like the commercial expression.
Yeah. Well, it's rare that you even get to actually encounter that scenario from the number of distilleries that we get to access that don't have commercial expressions. And when you do, they are so far apart. They are so far removed. And my favorite examples of that are when you taste something like a peated cask or something, or peated whiskey from a distillery that traditionally does not do a peated run very often, or vice versa. Or we get a really young expression from a distillery that their youngest age statement in their range starts at 12 years old or something like that. And we get like some 8 or 9 year old whiskey that is just searing and brilliant and almost like to the chewy core of their distillate rather than that's starting at 12, or vice versa. When we get a really old expression from a distillery where they go from no age statement to 15 years and that's it. And we get something like a 28-year-old whiskey from that distillery and you go, okay, that's rather cool. So it works both ways. It's in flavor profile and in peating level and in everything. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Matt, there's an awesome comment from Darren there. Can you bring that up on the screen to share with everyone? Thank you.
Yeah, from a practical view, we're paying under half for the Society 93s than OB 27s and get so much more for the money. Yep. Perfect example of the Society offering so much for so little. Yeah, it's absurd, isn't it? There's so many examples of that, and 93s versus OB 27 is a really good example of that. So we're almost talking in code, aren't we? 93 versus OB 27. Comment here from featured 93.101 Grand Cru cod liver oil at coincidentally Glen Scotia tasting event this year, and it was very polarizing in the room. Polarizing is good. That means it was it was interesting. I like that though.
Prawn to be Wild is another one that I remember unbelievably. One, because the name is just so good. I mean, it's just can't believe it hadn't been done until then, but it was also delicious.
Yeah, there was a great thread on our Facebook group about the most absurd names of bottling society ever done, and that was a really good list in that. And I think that one probably should have been in there as well. I saw a comment from Paul Hamilton Brown just earlier saying, "Jump back into that Volks collection. Have another nose again." It happened after the last 20 minutes. Ooh. Cigar ash is gone, but
see, mine's sweetened back up again now. It's done a parabola. It's come back down to where almost closer to it was at the start.
I'm going to come back to that again.
Yeah,
That's a good whiskey, though.
that's a good whiskey.
So that's the 93. I hope you're all enjoying that, and that's another insight into what's coming in Outturn. But that leaves us with 53.366. After all,
I've made a fatal error, gents. I've turned up with only 6 glasses on my table here. I need to go get a 7th glass. Please excuse me.
Go for it. Licking a coal scuttle. So we have a great relationship with Distillery 53, as it's obvious here. After 30 years, 366 casks passed by panel, and this one has had initial cask of ex-bourbon hogshead, and then a final cask of a second fill ex-Oloroso hogshead at 55.4% final proof. Oh,
I know it's the 7th dram, but that nose is just amazing.
That nose is amazing.
I'm gonna have to work out whether it's some sort of bias I'm applying or it's true. But I think
It could be.
such
It
a
could
good
be.
nose.
Yeah.
No, I can confirm, Morsey, it's not bias. That's just
Excellent.
That's quality.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Observe, Matt. I'm going the double-handed approach.
Oh, double hand. I've pointed this out before on stream. If Andrew goes double hand, this is a serious whiskey. That's fantastic nose, isn't it? You know what I love about that nose is that it's still so uniquely 53, and the sherry hasn't gotten in the way.
No, it hasn't, has it? Yeah.
It's just helped it out. It's just lifted it ever so slightly. Second fill finish. So it's a second fill Oloroso finish. Okay, well, great question here from Mark. Who's the clever name? Who's the clever namer, or is it shared around? I've got a theory on this. I like to think that one of our panelists is largely responsible for the wacky name and what we see, and he's pretty open about that. I like that. So yeah, I think it's, and of course, it's a
You're frozen on my screen, Matt. I don't know whether that's your end or my end, but
I'm glad you said that, AD, because I thought it was the 7 dram thing again, but Matt's gone blurry.
I'm frozen.
You're a little bit granulated, but we can hear you.
See what happens.
I'm admiring your face in the form of pixel art right now. It's looking good.
We've lost the host. And his portrait's back. Yeah, no, it's a funny thing about, often referred to as sort of Mr. C, and to the previous question around, is there anything that links the OBs with society bottles? What can you expect? I think it's really, really fun when you find some threads of consistency through society expressions of a particular distillery as well, though. I'm sorry, I forget who asked the question. Maybe I think it was Mark. I love Distillery 53, and one of the reasons is because society do it a particular way, which I just love, and you can almost rely on the society to get that right every time. And it's not necessarily the OB's way of doing it, but it's just there's a particular way that whoever's in charge of the spirit at that point in time is managing those casks that just creates it's like the society DNA starts running through it as well as the distillery's DNA, which I just think is a really cool feature when you can find that.
That's a good call, Alex. And the other thing I really love is there was folklore, legend. There was an unspoken understanding for many years in the whiskey community that the OBs, the official bottlings of this distillery, were great, but if you really wanted to experience the distillery in all its glory, you had to go to the independents. And there was this acknowledgement that the independents were putting out the best expressions of this distillery. And what I loved was then seeing that morph one step further, where the general consensus was that actually it's the society putting out the best expressions of it. It was the SMWS ones that were great. And tell you what, put this up to your nose and you suddenly understand why that is.
Absolutely. And that's a great comment to Andrew, because I think there was that era of when maybe availability at a particular point in time, but you'd see bit of a generalization, but maybe the more sort of like the Japanese independent bottlers or the Italian independent bottlers would have sort of spates of this particular distillery coming through. But then that was wildly inconsistent from one to the other because they were very much just a single cask purchased on a broker's market or one cask purchased directly. Whereas because the society's more centralized management maybe of maturation and making sure that they've got more control over that part, there was the ability to really go, well, we're looking for this, or we want to make sure that this distillery exhibits these qualities.
Yeah. Great comment there about the unpeated expressions from this distillery as well. Let's not forget that they put out some absolute crackers. Was it the Stitchell release? I think
yes.
it was
That was great.
There's another one. There's another word they used for the second batch of that. The first one was Stitchell and something else. But yeah,
it was. I think they just had the unpeated 14. I think they just called it the unpeated 14 as well, maybe. But Stitchell was an early whiskey I tried. I assumed back in the day when I thought like Isla meant peated, or sort of there was a synonymous region to taste profile that always applied, and then I had the Stitchell and thought, wow, okay, that's a myth.
What I love about this distillery, and I think I'm possibly just summing up everything we've just said in the last minute or two, but it is just so versatile. It is cracking in a first fill bourbon cask. It is cracking in a second fill cask. It is cracking in a sherry cask. It seems to be consistently great in all forms and expressions, and dare I say, at all age statements as well. And not too many of the other distilleries on Isla can make that claim. Others, if they're in a sherry cask, it's got to be at a certain age until it hits its straps. This one just seems to just work, and I love it for it.
In fact, that's a great point, Andrew, because you probably see some of the biggest age variation with this code for the society. You get from, I think I've seen a 6. I don't think I've seen as low as a 5, but maybe all the way up to the Volks Collection 30s. And they all work where they land.
Yep. Dead right.
Andrew, if you're putting in for that 30, I'm going to put in for that 53.
I didn't know they were exclusive rights, but okay.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, I'll go your halves, Matt. And I thought, Andrew wants the whole bottle, mate. He's just said it before. You can't chime in now.
Halvesies. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, very nice. And great comment from Alex. He says, Darren says, Alex nailed it, and the finished SMWS bottles are more than the sum of the parts. Consistently outstanding. Awesome to hear. It's true.
Gents, I've just put this to the palate, having nosed it for a couple of minutes. Wow. Everything you thought it would be on the nose just delivers right through onto the palate. Extraordinary jam.
And there will be salt. There will be salt. Yes, Rob. I know there will be salt. We're aware. We know. We're preparing for it. But a good.
No. There's no salt in whiskey.
No, I'm putting for both. Yep. I think we've got some favorites tonight. We've absolutely got some favorites. Oh, we're taking pre-orders. Who do I email? No.
Just shoot me all your bank details, Darren. I'll sort you out.
Darren, just put your credit card details in the chat. You'll be fine.
Yeah, that's right. Don't do that, Darren.
No, I'm just kidding. Don't actually do it.
I've been getting lots of calls on my mobile from this recorded voice that says it's Amazon, and they're phoning you. I'm just waiting till it's going to reach a point where you'll get a phone call, and it'll be, "This is the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. We have your details."
I would just believe that. I just blindly follow that. I'm going to get
Distillery 52 definitely has some salt notes. Yeah, I'll agree with that. And there's no soap AD. It's okay. And Paul says, I can't go past the 53. I may need to get this one. Yeah, look, Paul, I think it's going to be a popular one. It's a sherried 53, and it's a young sherried 53. It's a good price, and I'm blown away by the nose on that. More than everything else, but that's.
There's a follow-up comment from Paul that says sooty initially, though. Now you put the word though in, that almost sounds like that's a negative. Is that a disappointment? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like like chimney sweep sort of note. Yeah,
I'm about to say it's sooty, but in a good way, and that's what I want from 53. I'd be disappointed if it wasn't sooty.
Yeah.
I think that's right, Andrew. Because and I think you're absolutely right, Paul. It's sort of that you can start to differentiate particular the way that sort of that really dry, ashy note manifests in different distillery codes. And soot's definitely something I'd love on a 53, as opposed to maybe something a bit more campfirey on a 33.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Or bonfire on the 29.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
Question from Paul Michael Leyland, who asks, any talk on the ballots? There are 2 balloted bottlings on November Outturn, 149.1 and 130.5. They're ballot only. Now, both products will be up on the shop page on Outturn Day. Don't bother rushing to click on them, because they'll just link you straight through to the ballot, and then you'll miss out on what you're after on Outturn. So they'll go up at the end of the day, or maybe a few minutes after everything else has gone up. But the balloted bottlings will be up online on Friday the 12th, and they'll be ballot only. So, and we'll draw the ballot exactly 1 week after. There's not many to go around of each of those bottlings. One of them's the .1 and is going to be very popular, and one of them is a Japanese whiskey that is also going to be very popular. So we've had to make that choice to ballot them only. Yeah.
There's a comment from Michael on the side here, a sweetness on the palate as well. Absolutely, Michael, good call. And that's, again, what is so endearing about this distillery. It is sweet. The malt comes through. I love it when you take malted barley, and it's been malted courtesy of peat. You get that smokiness. You distill it. You ferment it. You create your wash. You distill it. You stick it in a barrel for however many years. When it comes out the other end still sweet, that is the sign to me that everyone did their job just right. What a fantastic outcome.
Absolutely.
Mark, you're right. We didn't do that this year.
We didn't
do that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
We've done that in years prior. We've each picked out a cask that we've all been overly fond of. But
this is Susie's choice. I mean, surely, right? We've got a
no brainer. This
we can assign it to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll tell you what. This would be our good friend Anthony Cowie's choice. He'd be going for this one.
This would be a Cowie choice, absolutely. Yeah. Very, very nice indeed.
Yeah, that's excellent.
I think my internet's fixed now. I think I should be okay.
You've been fine for quite a while, yeah.
Goody. I might just bring up the last portion here, just to. Here we go. So this is obviously not the only peated whiskey in Outturn. Paul Michael Leyland mentioned it before. There is a 149.1, smoky, salty, and malty. That is our third .1 of the year. It's going to be very popular, so we've put it on ballot only. It's a 5-year-old Highlander whiskey from a first fill ex Oloroso butt as well. So not many peated whiskies in this Outturn, but 2 out of 3 of them are sherried. So that's also one we're not tasting tonight, but is in the Outturn. You can win Santa's dram sack. We're giving away so many samples. So these tastings, like these virtuals that we've been doing all year, I've been secretly squirreling away a pack of each almost. And I filled this gift bag, this Santa's red dram bag, if you like, filled with samples. It's everything from mystery malts that we hosted in conjunction with the Oak Barrel. It's whiskey and cheese nights, whiskey and chocolate nights, Volks virtuals, everything like that. All jam-packed full of bag. I actually don't know how many samples are in the bag. It's dozens. I'd say it's close to sort of 30 or 40 in there. But we're giving that away. How do you win it? You either join the society, which most of you watching tonight will be already members, or refer a friend. And everyone goes in the draw. And we'll, as long as you do it all before the end of the year. So that one will be given away after that.
That is a ridiculously full sack.
It is a full sack. It is.
But to be fair, I mean, Santa only comes once a year, so.
Are you going to give it to Ozpost to deliver like that, mate? Because they might have more problems if they're not going to wrap it better than that.
No. We'll find a way to wrap it up. But that was you can win that this Christmas. There's also the Society crossword. I can only see one person so far has completed it in full. There's a few curveballs in there, so give that one a go in the Outturn. Post it on our group. Andrew and I are hosting the Ultimate Volks Collection virtual tasting. It's our last big virtual for the year. Friday, the 3rd of December. 5 different Volks Collection bottlings in there, which come to a combined value of $6,943 worth of whiskey in the pack. So it's a very cool tasting right there that you can participate in and join us for that journey. We'll taste through 5 different Volks Collection bottlings, which is very, very cool. 4 of which, or one of which has never even been released yet. It's a future release. So it's a bit of a preview bottling, that 53.333 there.
Speaking of Volts 53s, yeah.
Volts 53s, exactly right there, and including the 24.143, which is in this month's Outturn. The Substance Over Style is in that pack as well. It'll look something like this when it arrives, and we've got some rather special little samples sitting in that pack. Did I mention the total combined value? There it is again. So,
just before anyone writes in, that's the bottles.
That was,
Matt. That's not in each pack. That would be crazy. So.
no. Exactly. We also have the Society Advent Calendar is back for 2021, which is really exciting. It's 25 different samples in there, one for each day of Christmas, which you can pop open each day in December. The full list, I don't want to give away the full list, so look away if you want to see the next sort of little bit of a sneak peek, but there are venue exclusives in there. There are special casks in there. There are all sorts of things in that pack, which is super exciting. So that's also in Outturn this month coming. And what do we got? All sorts of articles also written by amazing staff members and friends of the Society. Alex has written Art in the Society. Murray's written classic whiskey books. Jenny's written about festive spirits and cheeses. And Miranda from Whiskey and Elm's written about my summer serve. That's our summer dramming guide. That's and I promised one last crappy animation to finish us off. The flames. There it is. Hey. So that's our full Outturn for this month, and we're really looking forward to sharing it with you on the 12th. So thank you so much for coming along for this ride with us tonight. And thank you, Alex. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, everyone, for commenting all your great questions, sharing these drams with us along the way tonight, and having a good shot at what's coming up in Outturn, having actually a chance to preview of what's coming up. So really appreciate it.
Hey, gents, this has been fantastic. Matt, well done tonight on putting all that together. I know how much work goes into the background to prepare the slides. Well done. Morsey, mate, absolute pleasure to drink with you. As we said off air before, the last time you and I had a dram at the same time in the same place was Christchurch 2020. So great to do that. What a fantastic lineup. It's just such an amazing Outturn. Members probably don't appreciate that, when this arrives in your email, in your inbox for November, the hard work actually took place back in January, February, early this year as we prepared the stuff that was coming into Australia at the time to put it together. It's fantastic to see it actually land. It's fantastic to see it in our warehouse and ready to go out for members for the end of the year. So this little journey and small little insight into all the goodies that are inside that publication is fantastic. And I really commend it to all members and trust you'll enjoy it over the Christmas summer break.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. We'll see you all soon. Happy Outturn 1 week from now, and we'll see you in the week ahead for some sneaky previews and whatnot to come. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.